Hello again. Today's video is on the progress of clearing and the beginning to level the house pad on what's currently our 12-acre plot. This is a fairly slow process. The backhoe's not the fastest, but it does the job and has definitely been worth having purchased. But the first thing I have to do is start digging things out and just kind of pushing everything from the high side to the low side, and then taking the trees down as I go. This is it's a good thing that we're excited to be working on where the house is actually going to go and be making progress there, but it's kind of a sad thing to see the trees disappear. This is one of the places we'd originally actually wanted to kind of make this like a little secret garden, basically. Kind of thin it out a little bit, let the bigger trees just become healthier. One of the downsides to that is that these trees are they're all in not all, the biggest of them are in the 20 to 25 year age. So they're about half their life, to be honest, because they're red alders, and red alders, from what I'm told, only grow between 40 and 60 years before they really start to die off. They're considered a transition tree. So this particular soil is actually quite great because it's had these red alders dumping nitrogen into it for the last 20 years. But we do plan on actually starting with red alders as the main tree in our lower forests as we replace the ash trees, as the emerald ash borer ends up eventually coming in and killing them. We'll load it full of red alders to help get things going and improve the soil for other trees, and then we'll be adding a bunch of maples and oaks and things like that. Maybe some cottonwoods, maybe some aspens, depending on the where it is. We're not looking at all for a monoculture forest. We don't actually want that because that's not the healthiest thing for the trees or the wildlife. So that's not what we're after for the forest. We want the most diverse and native forest that we can. The saddest part for me about digging this area out is that it's not covered in canary grass, so I'm getting rid of a lot of the native plants that we actually want. But again, we'll keep planting things, and these smaller trees, oddly enough, are actually young ash trees, which is surprising that they're so high up here, since they tend to like the more wet soils. That was kind of a surprise to see them up here, but all of the trees that are coming down will be milled up into 1 and 2 inch boards, and then set aside to dry, and then we'll use them for flooring and siding and furniture builds and whatever. So we won't be letting it go to waste, but we'll definitely take advantage of the fact that it's here. And I think I mentioned this before, but it's definitely so much easier to dig out the roots a little bit and then push the tree over than trying to fight with the stump after the tree's been, cut off, and then you have to dig up the root ball completely because there's nothing to help push it over, but it feels so much easier when you've still got the root ball attached. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to just attach some chains, and as I clear the trees out, I'm dragging them out of the way so that I can actually harvest them. And so you can see here's a pile that I've started making, and we'll set them. At this point, I've actually got about, I think, 3 different piles of trees that I need to buck up into logs. I might actually take the biggest of the logs or the biggest of the trees and actually make a drying shed, like a 12 by 16 log timber frame, I guess, style structure, and use some of those. But I might just use the biggest ones just to mill up into, wider boards for building whatever furniture we need. But now that I've started clearing out the area, I've got a bunch of loose soil that I can move. And after I take a minute to push some of these trees that have been, pushed down, I do need to widen this driveway a little bit. And so I'm just kind of trying to push everything as far over the edge of the leveled area as I can. But I'll just use this to build that up, and my goal here at the moment is that the camera doesn't really show it, but there's actually where Charlie's standing right now, there's actually a dip in the road, in the driveway, and so I'm just bringing soil from up here down so that I can smooth things out, widen it, and then level it all at the same time, and make that a much shallower hill, so that it'll be easier to both walk up and drive up. And I mentioned this in the last video, but I apologize if my voice is a little bit hoarse. Whatever the bug that I've got has definitely started to move into my lungs, and that tends to always be a bit of a challenge. That's been something I've had to definitely adapt to, I guess would be the best way to word that. Is ever since COVID, I've been much more susceptible to lung issues than I was before, and that's been a frustrating thing for Emily. Living in a camper, there's nowhere for us to, like, if one of us got sick, we could sleep in another room if we had a house built already. But in a camper, there's nowhere for the sick person to hide, so to speak. So pretty much every time she gets something from a patient that she's transporting or whatever. And this was a challenge that we had when she worked at the post office too. But anytime she'd have people come in, that's just a risk of working in the public. So she'd get something and I'd get it, and then that was never a problem before. But with COVID, that's just made things difficult. So that'll just be the way, I guess, the way life goes. So anyway, it'll go away in a few days, a few more days. Pretty sure I actually have a sinus infection at the moment, so that makes things much more difficult. But anyway, yeah. So really, all I'm trying to do is move enough dirt here that I can get access to the next set of trees that I need to fell. And it's interesting, I tried to spend some time yesterday on the tractor and seeing what's there now versus what's here, with this footage being about 2 months old now. Um, it's always cool to see the change, the progress. So right now I'm just doing the same thing. I'm taking the shrubs and stuff and trying to push them off to the side. And I don't care if the smaller shrubs, the branches and things are there. In fact, I kind of want them to decompose in various places because that just helps with the health of the soil. So the smaller stuff I just push off the edge that I've created, and then that can just decompose, and other stuff can grow up in between and whatever. But now that I've got that cleared out a little bit and moved the dirt, I can start working on the next trees. And again, it's pretty easy most of the time to just dig them out and then push them over, and then kind of push it out of the way, and then I can start working on that next tree. And most of these are in the range of they're about 50 or 60 feet tall, so they'll produce quite a bit of good little lumber. And I know a lot of people, I've been watching a bunch of different videos on like making homemade flooring and things like that, and there's definitely a lot that goes into that. And I think there's different types of lumber based on how you cut the log and where the piece of lumber comes from. There's plain sawn, rift sawn, and quarter sawn, and while there's definitely a difference in how each different type behaves as far as its likelihood to cup and warp and bow and things. Once the lumber's in its dried final state, it stays pretty stable at that point. You plane it and surface it, and then you've got a board that is for the sake of, like, for instance, flooring. That At that point, it's not going to really matter which piece of the log it came from or which section of the log it came from. But there's a lot of people out there that are really kind of picky, which surprises me. I like the variation in different logs, or in different boards. You get straight grain, you get wavy grain, you get cathedrals and things like that. And I like it when it's actually mixed up, which I was watching one of the channels I like to watch is actually Matthew Cremona. I started following him a long time ago because of he has a giant 6-foot wide bandsaw mill that he built, which is pretty awesome, and he mills some pretty amazing wood. And he spent a lot of time sorting through the lumber that he had available to pick out only straight grain for his flooring, and I thought, man, that's just kind of boring. I mean, to each their own. It's not my floor, so whatever, that's totally personal preference. But that'll be the advantage that having these smaller logs cut into flooring and siding and walls and things like that is going to be, is that there'll be a lot of variation. So I think that'll be actually a good thing. And sorry about the shakiness. I didn't realize that my trick to preventing the camera from falling was to actually tie it to the ROPS, and I didn't realize that it had actually had come loose, and so it was just dangling by the rope. So I apologize that was pretty rough at the end there, but as you can see, that's where the battery died. So that'll be the end of the footage for today. As always, thank you for watching. God bless you and yours, and I hope you're all safe and healthy out